You could probably call it something like the arrogance of complex persuasion. There is a sort of hillbilly style to the insane craftiness of Seattle's administration. Our society has devolved into pretty grave disputes about the functionality of our system. Superficially, you could say that the fact that they used a nerve agent on me and then hypnotized it, knowing it was there and knowing that I didn't know it was there, claiming that rapid eye movement interrogation of a NASA direction was going to prove the presence of defiant trespass, if not reality, then motive or meditation in a victim of torture that would be used to justify raping my deaf advocate, killing some of my friends, and subjecting me to chemical castration, exploitation of poetry for domestic terror, signal bombings, and ultimately Parkinson's, and who knows. They always end with who knows what else. I may yet do. While under the umbrella of providing what they called a profile of someone who claimed they were nonviolent for Amnesty International, you would think that an intelligent, middle of the road person would say they used the neuroplasm on this poor man to trigger convulsions in his facial nerve. That's not proof of rape. But they had bully Svengalis from King Crimson and Genesis claiming that not only did that prove rape, but the virginity and denials of the girl who they and they alone claimed rape to protect their source from museum book thefts, John Schulman, who pushed the claim that I was pushy and a reckless driver at Kelly's school when I was actually a protesting passenger and so on. Made it more complex. So they were saying +1 and -1, whether you be injected with HIV. And that could be a penny on the sidewalk. Any +1, they ripper murdered Shannon Harps to illustrate their concept. Fripp said even the attempt to hide is detected. In other words, even the attempt not to suffer terrible, tormenting head pains from tampering with a neuroplasm is detected. And this is all a folk ways, it can't be changed by state ways argument. They said I was pushed. Some mental health played a big role, and the Seattle Clubhouse played a big role in this. And tacit community continues to promote this. The idea that I speak too loud or don't speak too loud. I speak out of turn or don't speak out of turn. You know, because I'm deaf. Is it because I'm deaf or is it because I'm defiant? And they poisoned me in the mouth and did a lot of other horrible things. So how can this be justified? Well, Pitt says it is. They were the ones who stopped. They invited me. They said that was a metaphor, and it is actually in some ways. They invited me to a 6:00 appointment at Pitt Law School. Told me I could stay on campus as long as I didn't bother anyone else. And since I wasn't bothering anybody else, but understood the injunction could be misinterpreted, I went to the Pitt Law School to ask to speak to the person who had set up the appointment so I could be able to cancel politely because of the circumstances and guidelines that were being put on me. And no sooner did I show up to cancel the appointment and ask for the person who invited me there, I was arrested, pounced on and arrested for defiant trespass. And they announced that this proved rape. And I was resisting arrest by asking for her name. Now, their attorney system set this in motion by having Leslie Katz spread her legs and subject me to lascivious time-lapping ordeals to her feminine gender for months while we're denying me any kind of corollary satisfaction, and then mocked me. And I, said, your pretense is despicable, Leslie Katz. And they produced a lesbian from Magical Religion to come and say that I was sacredly honored. That I was a secret lesbian. And this was Swarthmore in the Ivy League around Carnegie Mellon University. So they started to interrogate the neuroplasm for what they claimed were secret Lenin hypnography. And this gets deeper and deeper as you move closer to Wattenmaker, the neurosurgeon, and his relationship with Ian MacDonald of the Dakota. Starts getting really very peculiar. And it's part of the Eastwood-Manson alliance. Wattenmaker was involved with Attica State Prison and Hollywood. These were snuff film operators getting Israeli delights out of executions of innocent people. It was sort of the rig-linked fickle finger of Karen Silkwood and so on. And this deranged mind game was given sublimity because that stupid and horrible crusader for his own ego put out a song called Mind Games. So they were like, oh man, Lennon consecrated this. Freddie Mercury said, play the game, consecrate this. And to contradict it was to get a death sentence visited on Searcy. They're still doing it, is the point. And what you get is that nobody is allowed to view my videotapes. How did they pull that off? They pulled that off by saying, to prove he isn't pushy, he has to live an isolated and lonely life. And so the sheriff says, hey, man, that's neat. I don't have to hear no testimony about these shenanigans. The police say, hey, man, that's neat. We can go back to being stupid as a professional duty. And the governor says, hey, man, that's neat. He won't call any questions about Tacoma Art Museum's rule. And the Attorney General says, hey, that's neat. It sounds really horrific, man. You need a specialist. And the people who know me say, hey, that's neat. You get freedom of expression. You can make videos of what they did to you. Ha ha. And there's no real explanation for it. They say that I was jealous, but the truth is that these people played fast and loose with any girl that was interested in me. Kathy Hayford came to Pittsburgh and pulled out because of the way the so-called people who were friends with me, they talked about me. It wasn't because she didn't know me. We'd lived together over a year. It was because she could see what they were doing. Jeannie heard what they were doing, and she grew up in Pittsburgh, and she just said they're a bunch of liars. And she was attacked and raped. I mean, these are not people you dare double-cross. I have a note over here. One of them wrote to me after a long day of being subject to their crazy ideas of communication. You know, it says, I think you know what I mean. I think you understand what I mean. You know, they send signals. You know, like when seriously Kennedy, this is the sort of thing that should be attended. The people who knew me at school should know this. The people who were in my family should know this. My friends should know this, and none of them do. Because none of them are allowed to know, because I'm supposed to prove I'm not pushy by leading a lonely life, man, to cover for what they pulled. The horrible things they did to me in places like Mount Desert Island, where I was being cased by a leader from the CIA named John Stockwell. These are not irrelevant trivialities. But Courtney Kennedy wrote to me. When I wrote back, they delivered it. There's a witness at the federal building. They delivered it that very day with hush-hush telephone call from where they could find 2 more Kennedy bodies in the lake. They sent me a tube big enough for my bagel knife right before they slashed and murdered Sharon Harps, and some postal union crazy was yammering at me at the post office. You know, this, and to them it was like a sacred mind game operation because I had written the Shonen knife. So they knifed Shannon. And this is the Seattle administration. These are the people of importance in Seattle, Washington pulling this. And there's nothing I can do. I mean, I put these publicly in Twitter and Facebook trying to get somebody to acknowledge this horror. Nobody does. It's a nightmare.